All right. So, the question you just asked me, I mean, basically on, how do you find stuff in the code book, and the related question that a lot of guys ask, and that's it. How do you get started on test questions, or how do you know where to look for a certain test question? And so, the bottom line to that, or the answer to that, is not as simple as it might seem, because that's actually the key to passing a test, really. I mean,
Yeah,
if you know how to find stuff in that code book with an open book test, you should theoretically be able to make 100 on it. I mean, because you're given enough time and enough knowledge of where stuff is in your code book, you shouldn't have any trouble eventually coming
yeah,
through the whole thing. The problem is that you're under kind of a gun, so you only have an X amount of time to find this stuff. And the flip side of that is when they've got you under that kind of pressure, you have a tendency to start reading things a little bit more sloppy than you might otherwise. And reading questions sloppily on this test is going to get you
yeah,
in trouble, because sometimes you can read a question, and we have a tendency to look at things kind of like from left to right and read it real fast. And honestly, the only things we pay attention to is the beginning and the end of the question. You know what I mean? And so
yeah,
they sometimes play on that because they'll start the question out as something asking you for a positive item or something, and then by the time they get to the end of it, they totally flip the question completely around. And if you're not careful, you've already formed your idea of what that question's about in the initial few seconds of looking at it. And so you got to be able to read every question just before I say anything else, and make sure that you have either eliminated stuff that's not important, or not eliminated stuff that is important.
yeah.
Before you start kind of looking for it in your code book, you got to have an idea of what you're looking for and kind of where you're looking for, because if you go off half cocked, you're going to fall prey to that kind of stuff they set you up for. The second part of that question, or the answer to that question, is that most guys that take electrical exams take the test like a keyword searcher would take it. And I mean,
Yeah,
why not? You got a keyword index in the back of your book, right?
yeah,
Do you use that index, or have you
yeah,
used it on the test?
yeah. I used it, the index on the back.
Did it help you any?
Yeah. Well, I found some, but not like real. I have a hard time finding them.
How come? What was hard about it? Just out of curiosity, do you remember? I mean, what was the most difficult part of using that index for you?
Sometimes just don't understand what I'm looking for in the question. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Like that's my biggest part. Like where to look for it, or what's the main. What should I look for in the question? You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
that's the thing I'm
I, I
missing.
wish I could. I wish I could make that easier for you, and I'm going to try my best to give you a little bit of insight on it. But the bottom line is that it takes a long time to get to know that code pretty well, and sometimes if you don't know the underlying issues real well, you might not realize that they're related to other things that will help you kind of understand the question. It's not necessarily stated clearly, but the bottom line is that index in the back of the book, most guys will read a question and they're looking for some keyword to kind of get traction on, and they'll once they've decided they know what the keyword is, they go back to that index in the back of your book, and they get started back there. And I'll tell you one thing about this index that well, there's a lot of things I don't like about it, but first and foremost is I don't know who laid it out, but
Yeah,
he wasn't an electrician. That's for damn sure, because it doesn't make any sense the way they got it laid out back here. I mean,
yeah,
things that I mean, if I'm looking for I don't know, we were looking for something the other day. What was it? Flexible chords. Flexible chords are a big chunk of test question material for German exam and even for the master's exam. When you look for flexible chords under F for flexible chords on page 883, for example, it tells you under flexible chords, see chords, comma, flexible. Thanks. So you started there, and now you have to go back to chords, comma, flexible. So you're following their instructions. You go over here to chords, comma, flexible, and if you're following along with me, that's on page 877. And chord, comma, flexible, it's kind of an inset there, and it's on the third column there in the top page 877, and it gives you Article 400, 422.16, 422, and then everything that's kind of inset there all the way down to the
yeah,
end of it is all flexible chords. And I can tell you by looking at it, there's probably 10 or 12 questions that are listed properly here, but they're listed kind of in a weird manner. Because if you're looking for like the bending radius, minimum bending radius for flexible cord or bending radii is under the B there. You'd have to go to cords, flexible bending radii, minimum. It tells you look under Article 400.34. Lamp holders, insulated bushing. That's a test question. It's just not easy to use by any means. I mean, I tell you, if I'm trying to, I tell you, let me put it to you this way. So we're talking about flexible cords, right?
Yeah.
All right. Turn to page 4 and 305. I'm a much better test taker if I've got my own notes somewhere, and flexible cords and things like lamp holders and things like infrared lamps and heating lamps, things like that. Those are all categories of things that are big groups of test questions on the exam, yet they're spread out to the whole code book. I mean, your lamp holders is one that I've got a list of about 15 different code sections that are on the test, but they're spread from the beginning to the end of the book. So to make my life easier, rather than using that index, what I'm doing here is if you look under 422.16 flexible cords there, right?
Yeah.
This is a core set of specific appliance types that have cord lengths that are minimum lengths and maximum lengths. And depending on what the type of appliance is that they're asking you to size, you're going to have to tell them what the minimum size or minimum or maximum length is for a cord, given that particular appliance type. So, for example, your in-sink waste disposers, your trash, your disposals, those have a 18-inch minimum and a 36-inch maximum length.
Yeah.
Well, you have the exact same wording there on the range hoods, which are on the next page over on section 4, and it has the same 18 inches to not more than 36 inches. So range hoods and disposals, sink disposals, are the same 1.5 to 3 foot max, minimum max length there. And then your built-in dishwashers, trash compactors, those both have a 36 to 48 or 3 foot to 4 foot length, and that's a rule that goes with them. All right, so that's 4 good items there. Really, 2 different categories. You've got the range hoods and disposals, and then the dishwashers and the trash compactors. Those 2 groups there. But you also have a test question that has a question that is asked, what's the maximum length permitted for a specific appliance? In any case, not specifically these items here, but some other appliance that's not listed there. And do you know what that maximum length is for a flexible cord for a specific appliance?
No, I don't.
6 feet. And so at
Which one is it?
6 feet. So at the bottom of the page, let's just make this page our go-to section for flexible cords, right? So what I'm going to do is at the bottom of either page, we'll just start on 304. I'm going to take those 2 groups that are listed there in the text, and I'm just going to rewrite them at the bottom here. I'm just going to put disposals and range.
At 304, right?
Huh?
304?
Yeah, on page 304. I'm just going to put disposals and range hoods, and then I'm going to put minimum 18 inches, and then in parentheses I'm going to put 1.5 feet. That way I've got them both in both the foot and the inch measurement, so they could ask me either way, and I'll be able to readily identify it real easily.
Yeah.
Maximum is going to be 36 or 3 feet, so 36 inches to 3 feet there in parentheses. And then right below that, on the same page 304, I'm going to also put my other pair, which is the dishwashers and trash compactors. I'm going to put minimum 36 inches, which is 3 feet in parentheses, and maximum is 48 inches or 4 feet in parentheses. And then just to the right of that, just put yourself another set of parentheses that says all other appliances, all other specific appliances. Maximum 6 feet.
What's the maximum?
Maximum 6 feet. 6 feet maximum.
And the minimum?
The article, just for your reference, is 210.50C. Let me get the page number real quick for you so you can just mark that down on the page number.
So what you said it was the maximum for the appliances?
For a specific appliance is 6 feet. So any appliance not specifically one of these four that are listed here with the 36 and 48 or the 18 to 36, those are going to
Yeah.
be 6 feet maximum. And that comes from 210.50C. And
Yeah.
the page number on that is page 60. Just for
Okay.
your reference there. Right?
All right.
And that's
So
210.
what's the minimum for dishwasher and trash compactors is 18 inches too?
Dishwasher, no, 36. For the dishwashers and trash compactors, it's 36 to 48. Page number was page 60 on that. All right. So what I've got here then on the bottom of my page is I've got
Yeah.
and that's a better way of capturing some of the more common links, right? There's also
Yeah.
another set for air conditioners. So on the right hand page on 305, let me just give you a couple more of those so you can fill those in as well. Air conditioning equipment, on that, for example, a room air conditioner, we have
Yeah.
a maximum cord length for anything that's 120 volts that's 10 feet long. So if I've got a room air conditioner plugged in with a cord cap, just a AC window unit, that cord cap can be a maximum of 10 feet if it's 120 volts. If it's a 208 or 240 volt, the maximum is going to be 6 feet. So just
6 feet.
just put room air or room window units, room air conditioning, AC units. We have a 10-foot rule on the 120 volt section type.
120 volt is 6 feet, right?
Well, 120 volts, 10 feet. And if it's 208 volt or 240 volt, it's 6 feet. Oh, right there.
Okay.
There's also a rule that says the ampacity of it. If I plug in a room air conditioner into a general purpose circuit, an outlet that's got other outlets on it. For example, if I'm in the living room, right? In the living room that you've got a bunch of duplex receptacles, on the wall there, and they're all tagged onto each other, daisy chained on one circuit. If I plug in a room air conditioner into one of those general purpose receptacles, then that circuit that serves other loads, the maximum I can use of that branch circuit is going to be 50% of that branch circuit rating for that one single fast in place room air conditioner. In other words, if I'm taking a 20 amp circuit in the living room, and I've got that circuit serving other receptacles down the wall, the most I can use, the biggest room air conditioner I could have would be a 10 amp room air conditioner. Does that make sense?
10 amps.
50,
Yeah,
50%.
half of a circuit.
Yeah, 50%.
50%.
If it's a plug-in, a place, fasten appliance like that, or room air conditioner, 50% of the branch circuit is the maximum that unit can be. So I'm just going to put myself a note right there beside that room air conditioners. Maximum amps on GP circuits, general purpose circuits, is equal to 50% of the branch rating. I've seen that question come up where they're asking you, they give you a 30 amp circuit that's got several outlets, spread throughout, and they've got this room air conditioner that's got a 10-3 cord, and they're asking you if you plug it into that circuit that serves other outlets, what's the ampacity of that 10-3 Romex, or that 10-3 flexible cord.
So
Bottom line would it be
15 amps?
That's right, 15 amps would be the answer there. All right, let's see. There's something else I'm forgetting here. The other flexible cord stuff that I think is important to you is going to be in Article 400. There's a table under 400.4, and the page number is probably going to be the best thing to put on there. But I'm just going to put on the bottom of page 305, just to note to yourself, flexible cord table. It's 400.4
Chords table.
flexible chord table. Flexible chord table is 400.4, and the page number to put as a reference is going to be page number 264.
Yeah, got it.
All right, so that's kind of a catch-all of flexible chords, and stuff like doing stuff like that may be helpful to you instead of relying on that index. But bottom line is that index. You go back to page 877, right?
877.
877. If you had that question asking you about the maximum chord length for a specific appliance, flexible chord length, you're talking about the maximum length for a specific appliance. I don't know that you could use this to find that at all. The article number that we know now that solves it is 210.50C, and I see 210.50B listed under this list of items, but I don't know that I see 210. I don't. So that's a pretty common test question, and this index wouldn't even get you there, and you'd take a lot of time going through all of these trying to find it, if that makes sense.
So I could just go where?
Yeah, the thing about this index is it's really a limited use type deal, and you really have to know what's in it and kind of how it's laid out, because if you don't, this thing will eat up your time. I mean, pretty bad,
Yeah.
pretty easy. There's no page numbers in here. The other thing, and I'll tell you, a lot of guys say, well, you're not supposed to rely on page numbers. You're supposed to memorize the article numbers, because page numbers change from every 3-year edition to the next 3-year edition. I'm not worried about that. To me, a page number will get you there faster than any other type of article number would. And so I'm going to tell you that when you're using this for practice in the next couple of days before you go into that test, anything and everything that you look up using this index, especially if you find something with it, I want you to write the page number and highlight that sucker in the back of this index. I mean, this index should be just as marked up and paginated and tabbed and notated as anything else in your code book. Because especially if this is the main tool you're going to use to take your test, you want this thing to be, just full of notes to yourself of where you found stuff in your code book before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I can write on the back of the pages whatever I think it's.
Write anything you want on these pages, as long as you kind of keep them to short, kind of what they call, non-lengthy notes. But a page number or reference or something like that that's close to what it belongs to is not what they consider.
What kind of questions I got asked a lot about the dip of the boxes? Like, it would have to be ½ inch or 1/8 or stuff like that.
What did you say that again now?
Like for example, they would ask me like how deep would the boxes be? Like 1 inch, 1/8, a quarter, stuff like that. I think I have a. Hold on.
You talking about like just a general box, or they give you some box fill where they give you some wire size and things in it?
No, just a general box. Like, where can I look at? So most of those questions I couldn't find them.
Okay, yeah, and I don't know that you can find that. Let's see, look under boxes here in the index. I know it's Article 314 is or 312. Let me see here. 314, I'm pretty sure. 312 is meters and cases. 312 is outlet device pull and junction boxes. So 314 is outlet device pull and junction boxes, conduit bodies, fittings, and handhole enclosures. And so you're talking about like just a general, like a minimum box size or depth, and I think you'll find
all that.
most of that stuff you should find somewhere around page 188. Let's see here. Yeah, so if you're looking on depth of boxes, which is 314.24, without enclosed devices or utilization equipment, if they don't enclose devices or utilization equipment, they have a minimum internal depth of ½ inch, which sounds kind of like the question you were just asking about. And if it's got large equipment, it can have it's got boxes that enclose devices or that utilization equipment that projects more than 1 7/8 inches rearward from the mounting plane of the box. have to have a depth that's not less than the depth of the equipment plus another 1/4 inch on top of that. And then you've got some boxes and enclosed devices with number 12s and number 10s have to be 1 and 3/16 inches in deep depth. And then there's this is all under B4, which is on the right-hand column of page 189. Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the stuff I'm talking about. So you think all the answers of depth will be here on these articles right here?
I mean, if you're talking about a box depth, this is the article that controls the code standard stuff. Now, if you've got you've got some stuff like that B1 where if you have a 1/4 inch plus whatever the depth of the equipment is, that's not a specific figure because it will vary from item to item or from large equipment to another item that's large equipment, but minimally, if it encloses devices or utilization equipment and has 8, 6, or 4 AUG in it, it's got to have a 2 16 inch depth, and that's a code specific minimum standard that's pretty easy to follow. And so is that 1 3/16 under the section 4 there, and then number 5 has got that 15 16 inch depth, and then that 1/4 inch, not 1/4 inch depth. I think that's the 3 right there. I'll tell you while we're sitting here talking and we're on this page, on page 188, the right column under F, raceway supported enclosures with devices, luminaires, or lamp holders. Exception number 2A, I believe, is the one that I'm pretty sure is. That's the answer to a test question where they do tell you to use exceptions on a journeyman test question, which is one that you're likely to run across as well. And they tell you in that question to regard exceptions, so it's something that they're instructing you to look at the exceptions and or at least consider those when you make your answer. And it's a hard question to find because it's talking about this basically this EMT raceway that's holding up a luminaire. And that I'd highlight that if I were you under.
Which one is exception 2?
Yeah, exception number 2A, I believe, is the answer to it. If it's not 2A, it's one of those under section 2, but I'm pretty sure it's either 2A or 2C, one of those two. But I'm almost sure it's section 2A. At any rate, that's just something to. And all right, so you're not going to find this again in a hurry because I'm telling you to write this down and you're not going to remember it tomorrow. I don't blame you. I mean, it's just part of the fact of dealing with this code book. It's hard to keep track of stuff. So when you're done, you want to come back here to this index.
Yeah.
And you want to look under box depth and maybe under D for depth, comma box, or B for box, comma depth. And if it's not wherever you would initially think to see it, and under boxes on page 871, you do have minimum depth that's listed under 314.24, which is the section we're in. So I'm just going to tell you that on page 871, on that first column there, in the middle where it says boxes, and then almost dead middle of the page where it says depth, comma minimum.
Yeah.
Is that article? I'm just going to tell you to put the page number to the left of that word depth. Just put page 189. That way you don't have to worry about remembering where it's at, and I would highlight that depth word, and then highlight the box word at the top. That way you've got a way to find it again real fast, and you don't have to memorize nothing now. You'd asked me that question, you thought you had a couple of those on your test, and you'll find it again just like that. No sweat.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to highlight and mark and put page numbers back there in this index, especially if you know that you've had trouble finding stuff before, and if you know anything else like that, don't be afraid to ask me, and I'll be happy to tell you. But this is the only way to cheat legally on this test. I mean, you can write notes all the way to everywhere you want in this code book, but if you can't find them again when you're in a hurry, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good, right? So the notes that we put at the bottom of that article, where do we write? What page number did we write those articles down, or those links down for those cord links? Do you remember? We were just there, right?
You put it in the back, huh?
Huh?
Yeah.
What page number was it?
I should just write it on the back.
Absolutely.
Should I write it on the back?
Absolutely. In that index, you need to put page 304 and 305 under flexible chords. That way, when you're trying to remember a chord length, you've got a note back here that says, all right, flexible chords. And honestly, I'd put them under flexible, comma, chords. I wouldn't put them under chords, comma, flexible. I'd go to the F section, which is not where it's supposed to be, but that's where your mind thinks it's going to be. And under flexible chords, which is on page 883 at the very bottom down there, I would just put links, see page 304, 305. And that way you've got all those notes kind of tagged down at the bottom. And I just put them under flexible chords because that's what they belong under.
Right.
Look for it again in a hurry, you know where they're at. Page numbers will beat an article number any day when you're in a hurry, especially if you know that you're not. I mean, I hope you're going to pass your test before the 2017 edition comes out, right?
I hope so. At least pass it.
So the page numbers that are in this edition are the ones that are important to you, and if you're taking a test under this edition, then these page numbers will be better than an article number. As far as finding stuff quick any day, because the page numbers linear.
You think it's better if I just write like? You think it's better if I just on the back of the book, those free pages?
Oh,
if I put like flexible and put the number?
No, you don't want to do that because that's what they're looking for. If they see stuff back there listed like that, then they kind of think you're making lists of answers and stuff. And you're not technically allowed to do that. So you can write a brief descriptive note, and so writing something like that underneath the index is something that they don't really know how to view that, so they kind of leave that stuff alone. But if they see a whole lot of stuff written in the back of those blank pages, then some lady somewhere is going to say, "Oh, you can't have that. That's too much writing in your book." And before you know it, she's going to stick you with a 2011 edition because that's all they have in their library, and you're really going to be in trouble then. So.
Right.
You don't have anything highlighted in it or tabs or nothing. It'll just be a blank 2011 or 2014 book. And that's a game that I've seen them do a number of times, and it's not fair, but it's just what they do. So it's not TVLR doing that, by the way. That's PSI's employees that just decide they're trying to understand, the gospel of TVLR from an unclear rule. And all right. So we're going to go back, and we need to finish up ranges a little bit, and then we need to do Ohm's Law tonight, and then we need to kind of get started on some services.
All right.
So let's go back to ranges on page 72. And again, that's one of those that if you don't remember where that table is, then it wouldn't hurt for you to put a note back in your index later tonight. Go find ranges or ovens or something in the back and put yourself a note, hey, ranges are on page 72. But on page 72, that table that we looked at the other night, everything that we did last, or the night before last, when we were dealing with ranges, was all based on service calculations, right? Everything we did was all service. And that's what this table really is. It's a demand factor for loads for the household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, countertop cooking units, other household cooking appliances over 1 3/4 rating. And this is supposed to be for a service calculation, a service rating, and it's just another number that we add to a list of other things that we calculate under the service calculations for the feeders on the outside of the building. But note 4 at the bottom, and I didn't want to tell you about it the other night because I don't want to confuse you. But note 4 at the bottom, if you look at it, note 4 is a special note that says, all right, listen, we'll let you use the same service table for calculating the feeders on the outside of the building. We'll allow you to use it as well for your branch circuit calculations as long as you follow one rule, and that is you have to be on the top row and only the top row to do that. In other words, if I'm on row 1, I can use that row to calculate a branch circuit calculation, so I can then turn around and take that number, divide it by 240 volts, and use that ampacity to size my Romex and my breaker for that wire going from the panel inside the house to the kitchen for that range specifically. All right, well, that doesn't seem like it's that big of a note, right? So effectively, let's look at it. Let's say that we had, if we're looking at this range here, this table here, and we're looking at that row 1 there. Highlight that top row. Just put you a highlight right across that top line, and put yourself a note, branch or service. That way you remember that it's either or. Let me see if I can share it.
On the number 1,
Number 1. Yep.
we put branch
Highlight that top row
circuits.
where it says branch circuits. You put branch circuits or service calculation. Let me load up a Word document here real quick. All right, so you should be able to see my window here now. And
Yeah.
let's say that we've got just this part right here, and ignore those answer blocks. It's not going to be the same for us. I'm just going to kind of blank these off for just a second, just so that you don't get distracted with them. If you had a question just like that with a 3,500 watt countertop range and a wall-mounted oven, what would be the demand load on the service for those 2 ranges? And that's kind of picking up where we left off the other night. So it's just another example of a service calculation.
So okay, let me see if I. So I add up the 3,500 plus the 4,500, right? And then I look it up like it's column B.
Yeah, right? That's right. This would be a column B range, sure enough.
For both, right?
For both of them, right?
Yeah. And then we add them up, right?
Yeah, I mean, but what's the multiplier you're going to use against them?
The 0.65.
That's right. You're on row 2. You're on row 2 there, and that's going to be
came out to 5,200.
55%. 5,200. That's exactly right. All right. Now, what I had on there was a dryer that was added with that, but we'll come back and do that later.
Dryers, is it something different table?
Yeah, it is a different table. You couldn't use the dryer in that same table with this.
Oh, okay.
All right. Now this question. Let's say instead of saying service, right?
Yeah.
You have the same question sitting there, and they're asking you for the load on the branch circuit. How would that differ? Well, I'm kind of glad you asked that. That note 4 down there is where this would come into play. Note 4 says I can't use anything but row 1 to calculate a branch circuit, right? Well, how do you deal with that rule then if you've got more than one appliance or more than one range? So if you look at the second half of the note 4, the second sentence there in note 4, it tells you basically that they'll allow you to artificially add together units that are cooktops and up to 2 wall mounts. So I can have 1 cooktop and 1 wall mount, or I can have 1 cooktop and 2 wall mounts, any combination of that other example. And I can artificially combine them and treat them as if I've just got one big range in that case.
Yeah.
Now, we kind of added them together here just now when we were doing the service calculation, but we weren't adding them together to move them to a different column, were we? We left them on row 2 because we looked at them as individual units. So we had 2 units, so we were on row 2, each one of them under its own column, right? As a service calculation.
Yeah.
What they're telling you here is a branch circuit. We're going to take that 3,500 and that 4,500. We're going to add them together and say I've just got one range by itself. Otherwise, I can't be on row 1. So when I do that, I've got how many watts total?
8,000.
8,000, right? All right. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take the 8,000 watts and I'm going to treat that as if it's just one range rated for 8,000 watts. So that puts me on row 1. Now, I didn't change columns because I'm still at 8,000, which is going to be within that range of what column B is. But instead of using 65% against 8,000, I'm using 65% against 8,000. I'm sorry, 80% against 8,000.
80%.
That's right. So I take 8,000 times 80%, and that should give you what, 6,400?
Yeah, 6400.
And that's my method to solve for a branch circuit. But again, here when you're doing note 4, you're adding them together and combining them and just treating them as one big range. So let's say that we had the same question and we had one more wall-mounted oven that was also 4,500 watts, and we'll just say we've got two 4,500 wall mount. That's saving some typing there. What would be the demand on the service calculation? Let's go back and make this a service on the service. How would I calculate that?
On the service?
And what would be my number there?
Is it 6,875?
So you took 3 ranges under column B at 55%.
Yeah, 55%.
So and then you took let's see, 8 plus 4,500 be 12,500.
Yeah.
12,500 times 55%. That gave you what?
6,875.
So 6.875, and so that would be a service calculation. That'd be the demand on the service based on those same numbers. All right. As a branch calculation, what would you have as a branch calculation? So I'm just going to put your service down here as a note. 6,000. What'd you say? 6,000 what? 75?
6,875.
875 watts. And then as a branch, what would it be?
Okay.
The note 4 tells you that you're allowed to combine a cooktop and up to 2 wall mounts, right?
Yeah. So add up everything up and then.
Yep.
Okay, hold on.
You're still coming up with that same 12.5, right?
Yeah.
And remember, with that note 1 at the bottom, if I'm on row 1 and I get into column C and I go past 12, that note 1 kicks in and says I got to take, for every 1 kW or major fraction thereof, I'm supposed to take a 5% increase.
More, but like if it's half, it's at 200.
Was that no? As a half, we round that up as if it was a whole nother kW. So it's really a 13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So B. Okay. It'll be 1900. No.
Well, on row 1, what's column C tell you?
It says more than 12,000. We'll do a 0.08.
On column C, row 1.
Yeah.
That point that's not 0.08. That's 8,000, right?
Right.
So with one range up to 12 kW, your demand load's pre-calculated, pre-done for you, and it's equal to 8,000 watts, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Yep. And
so you don't have to put the
400 watts for every 1 kW. You go past that chart.
Yeah.
5% of 8,000 being 400 watts. So the note that you want to put to yourself next to column C under row 1 is just put plus 1 kW equals 400 watts. That's an easy way to remind yourself that if I go past 12 kW, I'm going to still have this base 8,000 watts no matter what. Like that's a ball and chain figure I'm just going to be stuck with. But beyond that, I'm going to add 400 watts for every step I go past that chart. So any kW past 12 on a nameplate, I'm tacking on 400 watts for every 1 kW above that.
Can you show me how to do that example again one more time?
Let's go back. Forget this one that's right here. Let's just say that you had one range that was just simply one range by itself. Yeah. One range equal to 12,000 watts. So one range equal to 12,000 watts.
Okay.
What it is on row 1 that as long as I'm not over 12 kW, column C says not over 12 kW. So I'm there with that one range I've got right here. So that 8 that you're looking at there,
yeah,
is simply 8,000 watts, and that's the math is done for you, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing else to do. I'm just simply swapping that 12 kW for 8,000, and I'm done. But if I've got one range that was equal to, let's say, 13 kW, like we've got right here, I'm still going to do this same step up here that we did right here. I'm taking this swap of 8 to 12, So I'm going to come down here and take the first 12 of this number here. Excuse me. First 12 kW of this number I'm taking at 8,000 watts. But then I've got to go back and I've got to adjust that number there for each kW that I'm above that 12 kW. So in other words, I'm taking the 12 kW and I'm subtracting the 13 kW from it. So that's 1 kW extra plus 1 kW left over, and that's going to end up equaling 400 watts for that one extra kW.
So it'll be 84?
Be 8,400, that's right.
All right.
So if you've got a range that's equal to 14 kW, what would your number be?
88?
Yeah, exactly. It's as easy as that.
All right.
You're just tacking on 400 watts for every kW past the 12.
Okay.
17 kW would be what?
17?
Single 17 kW range.
Is it 22?
17 kW?
Yeah.
You're taking how many steps past 12 is that 17?
5?
That's right, 5. And so if I'm taking 400 watts for each one of those steps, I'm 5 times 400 is 2,000.
It'll be 2,000 more?
And then 2,000 goes with what number?
With 12?
No, but you're close. It's the number.
It'll be 12 plus.
Remember, you're substituting that 12 for the 8,000, right?
Yeah.
So it's 8,000 plus the 2,000.
It'll be 10,000.
2,000, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that ball nut that you have is that 8,000, right? But you're substituting that 8 for that first 12 kW of the nameplate rating. I know it's kind of confusing. I can say it a million times and it doesn't make it any easier. But all right. So a question that I ask you for a service calculation.
Yeah.
So a service calculation, and they give you one range that's equal to 9,000 watts.
Okay.
And then they give you a range that's equal to 5,500 watts, 5.5 kW, and one more that's also 5.5 kW. What would be your answer for those three ranges as a service calculation?
It's a service calculation?
Service calculation.
Okay.
Remember what we said yesterday about column C being a cousin that nobody wanted to mess with, right?
Yeah.
When he's around, everybody's doing what he wants to do, right? You ain't messing with him. Whatever he says, it goes. You might be that cousin, or you might have had a cousin like that. And he's always kind of, whenever big brother or whatever it is, he's always kind of, he's not a bully, but he's definitely assertive. When he's around, you're going to do whatever he wants to do. In this case, you got one column C range, right? The 9,000 watts.
Yeah.
And then you got two ranges that are column B. Where does that put you at? Well, you got three separate units, so you're on row 3, right?
Yeah.
But am I actually on row 2 with the two column B's, or on row 1 with the column C, or what do we do with that column C when he's around?
Do we do it separate or?
Nope.
Or do we add it all together?
Remember we said yesterday, if I got a column C, they're all column C's.
Column C's. All right.
I'm looking at row 3. That number that you're looking at there is 14,000 watts.
Yeah.
And that's really all there is to it. There's not really any way to separate a column C from an A and a B, or in this case a pair of B.
So once you have C, that's it. You do
They're
C.
all column C. Yeah. In that case, I'm on row 3 under column C. I'm looking at 14,000 watts. Now, 14 kW. What happens, though, if I turn around and ask you that same question, same exact example, but instead of giving you this one is sorry, I don't know why my Windows wants to tell me what I'm trying to do here, and so it's trying to make numbers out of this instead of. There. All right. So I have the same question, but I ask you for a branch circuit calculation, right?
Yeah. For a branch
Calculation. And the branch calculation, I've got the same same ranges. How do I deal with that?
They said we just use the column number 1.
Yeah, I can't be on anything but row 1 if I'm doing a branch circuit calculation. So how do I get there?
Well, I'm using this.
Note 4. Note 4 is branch only.
Yeah, the branch.
And what's the second part of note 4 tell you to do?
Well, it says add them up and use them as one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we add them up and then we calculate by 8,000 watts or.
A minute ago, you told me how much did you do for a 17 kW range, and how did you do it? If I had one range, it was 17 kW.
Which one?
When I asked you a minute ago for that 17 kW, and you told me your answer was 2,000 plus 8,000. How did you do that? You're on row 1 with a 17 kW range. You took.
Yeah. Well, for every 1,000, we add 400 more.
That's right. So the 8,000 is the base number, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm adding this 9 and this 5.5 and this 5.5 together, what does that add up to be?
20.
20 kW. So I've got one range here that's equal to 20 kW is what we've got.
We got.
And remember how you did it a minute ago, you took the first 12 of that number and substituted 8,000 watts, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
I got 12 more times 400, is it?
Yeah, except not quite 12, because you're doing 12 and 12 would be 24. This is just when you take 12 off of this number, you got what, 6,000 left? No, 8,000. 12 kW from 20 kW. So that first 12,000 of that 20 kW equals 8,000 watts, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got a total of
8
steps, right?
Yeah.
20 minus 12 is 8. Each one of those 8 kWs is going to equal 400 watts. So just 8 times 400 equals what?
32.
3,200. And that 3,200 is added to that 8,000 that's up there, giving you a combined value of 11,200, I think. That makes sense at all?
Yeah, it does. It just.
Now look back at that example and look, it's the same exact 3 ranges, right?
Yeah.
But the way you attacked it was completely different because as a service calculation, I've got 3 separate units. That put me on row 3.
Yeah. Row 3, so it's 14.
Yeah, I know it's totally 14. It's just 14 kW. You didn't have to do any math to do that. You just looked over there and it was just a lookup reference. That's all there was to it. But with the branch calculation, when you're on row 1, if you go past 12 kW, you have that base 8,000 for the first 12 of it, no matter what, and then add on 400 watts for every kW past that initial 12 that you go past it. So you look at it as, just penalty steps for every kW. All right, let's do it again. Let's say we had the exact same setup, but instead of what I gave you here, let's do a range that's cooktop. We'll call it a 3.5 kW. And we'll leave the other 2 at 5 each. Do them both ways. Do them as a service calculation first, and then do it as a branch circuit calculation, tell them what the difference is. Are you looking at what I just did under the first row there?
Yeah, the first one.
As a service calculation, I got 3 separate units, right?
Yeah.
So under row 3, I'm looking at those 3 ranges, and now I've got 3 of them that are all falling into column B.
Yeah.
So under column B, I'm looking at 55% on row 3 for
Yes.
55% again. So I'm just adding them up. Now I'm leaving it at 14.5. I don't have to round this up because I'm not on row 1 with a range over 12 kW. So that rule doesn't apply here. So I'm leaving it at 14.5 and I'm multiplying it times the 55% because that's 55% against each one of those ranges there. There's a service calculation. I've got 14.5, but as a branch, I've got 15 kW, don't I? As a branch calculation, I am adding them up. I get the 14.5 the same way I did the first time, but note 1 tells me that every half kW or a major fraction thereof counts the same as the whole kW. So there I'm rounding that up to a 15 kW range, but I'm doing that because I'm on row 1 and I'm past 12 kW when I do that adding. So that 14.5 kW becomes a 15 kW range. And the first 12 kW of that number equals 8,000, so that doesn't change on me. That's still the same math there, right?
Okay.
And what's the difference here then?
We use a row 1, is it?
Yeah, we're on row 1 there.
Okay, I get it. So branch circuits. Okay.
Branch circuit, the difference is when I'm adding them up, it's shifting my rows to a whole different category.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm on row 1, and that's the only way I can be there, when I start adding those ranges up, if I end up with a 12 kW, I'm okay because I'm still good with column C. But I can get something bigger than 12 kW, then I got to do this crazy math where I do that anything over the 12, I got to take 400 watts for anything that's a kW or major fraction thereof. So that's why this becomes a 15 kW right here instead of 14.5 like it was up here.
Okay. Right? So, all right.
When I shifted,
give me one more example now.
Okay.
I think I got it.
Starting to kind of click in a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to get rid of this here. So I'm going to leave this example here. I'm just going to copy the whole thing and just do another one right below it. Okay. You can still have this to go back and review. All right. So this is we'll call this one an 11.5 kW cooktop. We'll call this one a 12 kW, and we'll call this one a 9 kW. I'm going to erase this stuff here so you don't have to worry about that getting in your way. And as a branch calculation, I'm going to give you the same ranges, but we're going to make this a branch instead of service. Make that an 11.5 cooktop. Let me see here if I can do that. It may be too much on that 11.5 plus 12 plus 9. No, I can't go past 28, 27. So that last one's going to have to be, let's make this I'm still here.
All right. Okay, so. Times.
Just need to pick my nose, didn't want you to see it. You kidding? Yes, please. Thank you. Oh, and a drink too. Awesome. Thank you. I was just trying to drink. No, it's all right. Thank you, babe. Try me some cinnamon rolls. Even warmed up.
So nice.
Can't complain with that. What's the service calculation?
So okay, let me see. Let me see if I did the steps right. I put since I'm using column B, I'm gonna use a 0.55%.
For an 11.5, a 12, and a 9?
Yeah.
What's column B? What's the sizes that permissible in a column B?
Uh, 3,500 to 8750.
Uh-huh.
So should be using column A, right?
Column A is even worse. It's even smaller, right?
Yeah.
If I give you an 11.5 and a 12 and a 9, what column do those fall under?
Oh, once a C, it's always a C, right?
Yeah, they're all column C ranges, right?
Yeah. So it's
It's actually pretty easy because that's an example of 3 ranges that are in column C.
yeah.
Column C doesn't require any math as long as you stay within that zone there. So you've got 3 ranges under column C is what?
8,000.
No, on row 3.
Oh. Point 14,000.
14,000, that's right. So the answer to this is, if it's a service calculation, you look at each range and say which column do it fall under. Right?
Yeah.
If I've got an 11.5, that's a column C range.
All right.
And I've got that 12, which is also column C, and the 9, which is also column C. So 3 ranges under column C on row 3, then that number is already pre-calculated as 14,000 watts.
Okay.
So
So what?
no, go ahead.
So when it's like 3 like that, it's just 14,000. That's it.
That's it. There's nothing, you don't have to do any math to it. It's already done.
All right.
And then as a branch, though, you're looking at these 3 added together, because that's going to have to be on row 1. I can only, the first example, I'm on row 3 because I got 3 separate units. The next example, I'm on row 1 because that's the artificial rule of 4.
Branch circuits.
So I've got 1 range equal to what size here?
12.
Well, when you add those up, what do you get?
Oh, we add them up.
Uh-huh.
$26.5.
That's exactly right. So I got a range that's equal to 26.5, which here, when we're dealing with note 1, we're really rounding it up to a 27 kW range, right?
Yeah.
There's a 27 kW.
So
The first 12 of that 27 equals 8,000 watts. Because I'm on row 1 here, and that's where that 8,000 watts does come into play for the first 12 kW of that number. So the process here is I'm taking 12 from 27, and I'm substituting 8,000 watts for that first block of 12 kW, the nameplate. And then I'm going to adjust every 1 kW past 12, but the nameplate goes off the chart. So 27 minus 12 is what? How many kW?
15.
Yeah, it'd be 15, right? Yeah, that's right.
So we multiply 15 times 400.
That's right. Yeah. 15 times 400 is 16,600. And what do I do with that 16,600?
You add it up to the 8.
I add the 8,000 to it. That's right.
So it's 14,000.
Be 24,600. 16,6 plus 8. 24,6. Twice. Right? I'm throwing you back and forth, and I get that, but you got to. The difference here is you got to, in your mind, you got to draw a complete left brain and right brain, and the left brain is service calculation, the right brain is branch.
Yeah, branch circuits.
And so it really does become, it's pretty clear the critical pivotal question you have to ask yourself when a range question comes around is this a branch or a service calculation?
Okay.
If it's a branch, I'm going to add ranges together, so I'm on row 1 artificial, and that's a whole different animal when I start getting the bigger ranges. All right, let's say we had. I'm going to do it again because you're not quite there yet. You're almost there, but you're almost there. Hang in there. I can feel the brain cells just about to hit that light bulb. I know, right? If that's a 7.5 and a 7.5 and an 8.5, what do I have there for a service? And then do the same 3 as a branch. Do the same 3 as a branch. There's a service and a branch.
So that service. It's a. Okay, so the first one is at 12.925.
It's exactly right. 12.925, 12,925 or 12.92 kVA. That's absolutely right.
Okay, and then the second one is it comes out to 24. I added up, so it's 24,000, right?
Let's see, 14. Something went wrong here. So I got 7.5 twice. Plus for that number, I got 8.5, which gives me 23.5, right? Is that what you got?
What is it?
7.5 plus 7.5. Man, my calculator's not working. 7.5 twice plus 8,000. 23.
Is it 8.5, right?
That's 23.5 total together, right?
23.5. So you round it up to 24, right?
Yep, rounded up to 24. So the 24 kW on row 1, the first 12 kW of that is
It's 8,000.
And that leaves you with 12 additional steps then. Each one of those is going to be 400 watts. So you got a 4,800 plus 8,000 comes to 12.8.
So which is to the 12 times 4, it's 48, right?
And the 48 added the 8,000 base number you got there in column C.
Comes out to 12,800.
All
Right.
All right. What is we go back and add that dryer back in here. Actually, the demand on the service for those units there, and we just had, let's see, we just had one 4,500 there. So
How do you find the dryer? Is it the same thing?
The dryer falls under 220.54, which is one page back from where you're at right now on page 71. And the first thing you got to know about dryers is actually under the article, which is listed on page 70. At the very last thing that's on the bottom right-hand column of page 70, it tells you they got to have at least 5,000 watts or a nameplate, whichever is greater. So in this case, if I gave you the dryer rated for 5,000 watts, that meets that rule anyway, so you wouldn't have to adjust it. And on the table, which is on the left-hand column of page 71, 220.54, 1 through 4 dryers, there's no derating for those. So it'd just be 100% of that 5,000 watts for the dryer.
So 1 to 4 would be. So like, okay. So at the end of it, you would just add up the 5,000. That's it.
Yeah, the 5,000, whatever your range totals were. Well, those things weren't very good. Those are McDonald's. They didn't stick to making cheeseburgers. I tell you, it was cold and rainy out here today. Did you get any rain over there?
It started to snow over here.
What?
Huh?
Really?
Yeah.
Did it stick? You get any
Nah. It just snowed a little bit.
Yeah. It didn't get down below 44 degrees around here, so it was, just rain. Just cold, wet rain.
Yeah, over here we have a lot of wind. That's why it gets real cold.
You're in El Paso?
No, I'm in Midland.
Oh, Midland?
Yeah.
Yeah, Midland sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's just out in the middle of nowhere. And,
So it's number 4?
yeah, exactly right. 10,200. Both of those are column B. So you add them up, 8,000 times 75%, no, 65%.
65%, and then add up the
5,000.
So the dryer, most of the time, it's gonna be the same.
Yeah, I've even seen them use the word dryer before, just the word dryer. And that 5,000 watts is something you can just know without a doubt you can plug in there for that word dryer because it's a minimum 5,000 watts or the nameplate, whichever is larger. So, and then with dryers, the first 4 of them, there's no derating. So usually there's only 1 or 2 in the house anyway.
So it will be 5. I will do the 85%.
No. Oh, if you had 5 of them?
Yeah, like for example, on the table it says 5.
Yeah.
85%.
Yeah, if you had 5 of them, and each one of them at least 5,000 watts would be 25,000 times 85%, and that would be the way to derate.
All right, but it's okay. I never saw a question like that, but if I see
No, yeah, I mean, you might have seen a dryer here or there thrown in with an appliance with a service calculation or something, but typically there's not a derating used with dryers. So if you do have a calculation that's got like square footage, it's got a dryer and a range and a bunch of other stuff in it, the dryer is usually just going to be 100% of whatever the nameplate is because it's usually not deratable. Unless they give you 4,500 watts, then you have to bump it up to 5,000 minimum. All right, so if you had a range, the number 10 here, just do number 10 real fast, and that'll be the last one I throw at you. Give you a break after this.
So it says. It's 11,000.
And that's not, it's not 2 times 11 kW, by the way. That's 2 of them added together equal that 11 kW. So you just got 9 and 11 total.
To be. So it's still 11,000, right? Plus 9,000.
You what?
Is it 9,000 plus 11,000?
Yeah, those two combined, yep. Are you doing a branch or service calculation with that question?
Branch.
Doing a branch, that's right. And so what do you
Right.
do for? You're adding
Well, I add up 9,000 plus 11,000,
Yep.
and I'm gonna use the column first, the 8,000. Oh,
Uh-huh.
so first 12 minus 12,000 equals 8,000. 8. That's 400. So 8,000 plus 8,000. So 8 times 400 plus. Comes out to 11,200.
11,200, exactly right. Now, you're looking for a branch circuit rating. So 11,200 that you're looking at there,
Yeah,
volt amps, right?
yeah.
The service here on the residential dwelling is going to be given as a 120/240. That's just the code, maximum voltage rating for residential services. So that 11,200, divide that, in this case, by 240 volts, because that's what you're trying to do here is find out the amps needed.
So we divide by 240 volts.
Yep, divided by 240 volts. That's your nominal voltage rating there.
It'll be 46.6666.
Yep, and do you round those up or round them down?
Up.
Yep, most of the time with breakers, you're usually rounding them up. On page 96, 97 of your code book, take a quick minute here to highlight article 240.6.
96 to 97.
Page 96, 97. At the bottom of 96 and at the top of 97, the standard breaker sizes and fuse ratings are listed there for you. It's a really important article not to lose track of. I want you to dog ear that page, make sure you highlight those, and usually most of the time, except with motors, you're going to round those up to the next larger standard size breaker. So you're looking at, in this case, 46.66 would round up to 50 amps, right?
All right. So it'll be 50 amps, right?
Be 50 amps would be the answer to it. All right, now on page, let's see if I can find this real fast. On page 57 of your code book, under Article 210.19A3.
57, right?
Page 57, yes, sir.
Yeah. Which one?
The very bottom right-hand column where it says note 3 there, where it says household ranges and cooking appliances.
Yeah.
There's a rule here that says for ranges, the last sentence there says for ranges of 8 3/4 kW more, minimum branch circuit rating is going to be 40 amps. That's an 8750 kW is what that is, and that's a nameplate rating, 8750 or larger. So going back to page 72, you need to write yourself a quick note on page 72. At the top of the page, just put minimum branch ranges 8750 watts plus, minimum 40 amps.
Page 52 on the top, I should put what?
On page 72, going back to page 72, at the top, just put minimum branch circuit rating, sizes 8750 watts plus.
It's 40 amp.
Uh-huh. And then there's another code rule that is back in Article 422.11b that tells you, now let's go back and look at it real fast.
What page is it?
422.11b, and it's going to be on page. It's on page 303, I think. 422.11b. On page 303 on the left-hand column under B, household appliances and surface heating elements, which is i.e. a range. Those, they can have a maximum demand not more than 60 amps, but they can't be protected with any circuit breaker larger than 50 amps. So effectively, the second note at the top of that table is going to be no range size of any, no range will ever be larger than 50 amps ever, no matter what size it is. So those are just a couple of code minimum maximums there that kind of go with the table and just need to be kind of kept close. All right, we've got about 30 minutes or so left. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, just kind of, and I want you to get up. So this is the outline for your exam, and I asked you Monday about or Sunday about your test results. Do you have those, by any chance?
I can't seem to find them.
Okay, that's fine. This is the breakdown from PSI that they tell you what's going to be on your test as far as the percentages.
Yeah.
And that definitions, calculation, theories, and plans at the top row there, that is mainly, you know, Article 100 definitions, which are pretty self-explanatory usually. Did you remember any definition questions that you had, or did you have any trouble finding definitions or anything on the test that seemed like?
I don't think I did.
Okay. Do you remember having a couple of them?
Excuse me?
Did you remember having a couple of definition questions?
I think I did.
Okay. All right. So if you didn't have any trouble with those, do you remember? You don't remember what you scored on that line or that row?
Yeah. I don't.
Okay, that's fine. And then the calculations that they get listed there, those are Ohm's law calculations.
Ohm's law.
Or any kind of calculations that don't require a specific code article. You know, like the ranges and stuff. Those are calculations, but they don't fall under that category. So it'd be a non-code math type calculation. Or the other ones are the prints, or the plans and the prints. Did you have any trouble with any of the print questions?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay. All right.
You know which one I had a problem with? It was electrical feeders.
Feeders, yeah. You got 7 of those.
Mm-hmm.
You think the Ohm's law stuff is pretty easy for you, or no?
No, I don't think. I think I need help on that.
Would you rather do Ohm's law tonight, or you want to talk about some feeders?
I could do Ohm's law tonight.
Okay. And we'll do feeders then tomorrow when we get started, because that's another big section. That, I mean, you get 7 out of that. Now the 14, the branch circuit calculations and conductors. That 14 questions that you're looking at there, the ranges would fall under that category, or they could fall under electrical feeders, depending on whether or not they're doing branch or service calculations. But electrical wiring methods and materials, that 10 questions there, that comes out of Chapter 3. And Chapter 3 is something that's going to be, you know, worth spending some time getting used to. Electrical equipment and devices, that's mainly, you know, switches and receptacle rules and things like that. 406 and 404. 402 to some degree, and 400 being flexible cords and fixture wires, kind of in that order. But those are all code questions, so it shouldn't be too hard for you to be able to look those up and answer them pretty easily. But I would do a quick review of 404 and 406, just kind of refamiliarize yourself with the rules on switches and receptacles and things like that. Motors and generators, there's 2 questions there, probably 1 of each. And then control devices and disconnect means. Don't forget, breakers fall under that line that's electrical equipment and devices, because a breaker is a device after all. More so than anything else, it's considered a device. And so any kind of breaker related questions or something like that would fall under that category. And then special occupancy equipment and conditions, that's all Chapter 5, 6, and 7. So mostly you probably have stuff that came out of like Chapter 7 as far as like generators, emergency systems, or emergency lighting or something, battery backup lighting, but you probably wouldn't have a whole lot of that um, being that you're in a residential world. It's really mainly just uh, backup systems, emergency generators, and stuff on small scales. But um, chapter 6 for the renewable energy technologies, that's almost all out of Article 690, which is your solar PV system. You might have had a question that came out of that Article 690. Does that sound? Did you remember anything talking about solar PV systems or solar photovoltaic questions or anything like that?
I don't think they have anything like that.
Well, there's 2 questions on your test that come out of 690. In 690, I'll give you just a real quick heads up on the ones I'm aware of, and then you can just highlight them real fast and be done with those. But renewable energy technologies for you guys will either be 690 or 692, is it? Which is the wind systems, 694, which is wind systems. But if you're looking on page 623, the definition of an inverter, that second part on page, page 624. The definition of an inverter has been a question that's come up before on during these exams.
Yeah.
And so it's the second half of it where they're talking about it. It functions as a battery charger. To just be, I'd highlight that just so you'd have it highlighted.
Which one, the inverter?
Yeah, the definition of an inverter, which is the middle of the page on 624 on the left-hand side.
Yeah. The equipment that is used to change voltage?
That's right. Yeah, the last sentence there where it says inverters may also function as battery chargers. They use AC current to convert it to DC for charging batteries. That was just a test question. Just ask you, what do you call an inverter that does that kind of function, taking AC to make it DC to charge batteries? And then on page 625, under 690.7, which is the maximum PV system voltage, and let's see here, it's actually going to be at the top of the next page. Yeah, under section C, which is 600 volts. So your source and output circuits in 1 and 2 family dwellings is going to be maximum PV system voltage of 600 volts.
Where's that at?
That's on page 626. It continues on page 626 under section C.
Okay.
And then I'm aware of a question that comes under, it could fall under a number of different things, but most of the time when we're talking about sizing conductors and sizing breakers and fuses and stuff for PV systems, if you look on the left-hand column, page 627, under the left-hand column on page 627 under the top left-hand where it says D, sizing and module interconnection conductors. You see the rate of a single device plus 125% of the short circuit current. Highlight that 125%. You'll see that over and over again when you size and stuff for PV systems. That 125% is also something that we do with feeders and stuff. It's continuous duty rating is what that is. And then the overcurrent device ratings under B, which is the same column down toward the bottom. 690.9B, where it says overcurrent device rating shall not be less than 125% of the maximum calculated currents. The other question has to do with a disconnecting means, and it's going to be under, let's see here, where is that other one? Disconnecting the photo. Find that other one real quick. Should be suitable for inside a building. Well, let me give you this one, which is going to be for sure on page 630. Under grouping, so I'm on the right hand column at the bottom of the page 630 where it says for grouping.
Yeah.
They've got to be grouped separately. Every interval is not to exceed 6 feet.
Okay. You
have another 6 foot rule on multi-conductor cable on the left hand column of the right-hand page on 631 on the left-hand column under D, multi-conductor cables. You also have that same 6-foot rule, and that's security intervals not exceeding 6 feet. And where is the 10-foot labeling? And on page 632 at the very top left-hand corner up there is a rule for labeling and marking conduits and raceways. And the last, the line 3 there on number 4 on page 632 at the top left-hand corner up there, the last 3 rows of that say, shall not be more than 10 feet. Labels required by this section to be suitable for the environment where they're installed. You see that right there? Starts out with marking and labeling methods and locations under number 4. So they got to be reflective and capitalized, be a maximum of 3/8 inch on white with a red background.
Yeah.
And then the spacing between the markings can't be more than 10 feet.
Okay.
So there's a question that's asking about the disconnecting of them having to be either readily accessible or accessible or what they might be, and trying to find that real quick. It's a I thought it was right.
What do you mean ready accessible?
Readily accessible means that you can walk right up to it without having to move anything out of the way, take any. I mean, literally, you have to be able to walk up to it and not resort to using a ladder or any sort of moving of equipment to get to it. So it just,
Any disconnect should be readily accessible, right?
most of the time, yeah, they should be readily accessible. But there is a rule that allows you to have a not readily accessible, but they just have to be accessible as it applies to equipment. And it is somewhere here, and I'm trying to find it real quick. Give me 1 second. I know it's here. They're not required to be readily accessible. They're just required to be accessible, but I'm trying to find it. Okay, so there, if you look on 629, on page 629 at the top left-hand corner, it tells you under A, if they're mounted in not really accessible locations, they're permitted to be mounted on roofs that are not really accessible, but they have to comply with the four items below. But they're not necessarily required to be readily accessible, is what the intent of the question is asking you. All right, and so I'm not sure what under 694 there is, but 694 is also renewable energy technologies. So it's conceivable you might have something that runs under 694, but I don't really know what they are, so I'm just going to tell you, just be kind of aware of it. It starts on page 640. So there's 2 questions, like I said, that'll be on your test that have to do with either 690 or 694. So hopefully that'll get you some couple, maybe both of them, but either way, at least you know where to start looking for them if you run across those questions. As far as your general reading goes, Article 210 for you is going to be just, I mean, there's nothing in Article 210 that I could rule out, really. 210 is kind of like the core set of rules for residential wiremen. And 210 branch circuit rules, and it mainly applies to branch circuits in residential dwellings. Now, it doesn't just apply there in every case, but for the most part, most of the rules that we see here are going to be residential in nature. So starting on page 51 in Article 210, every bit of this needs to be something that you need to be familiar with as far as reading it, making sure you're familiar with 210.8 and 210.12, and I mean 210.52, all your spacing and stuff for your outlets and whatnot, kitchen countertop spacing and all that stuff, the rules for hallways and balconies and multifamily dwellings and things of that nature with the receptacles.
Most of the question residential being 210.
A lot of them. I mean, 210 is so dense in residential related material, it's not even funny. And then 220 is the next one, but 220, as far as where you're concerned, would just be pages 67 through 72, and that's as far as you have to worry about. And 67 through 72, I'm going to go over with you kind of in a minute, but the stuff that is in 210 all the way from page 51 all the way through page well, 63 starts getting into some stuff that's not residential dwelling. So I'd say 62 is kind of the end of where you got to be familiar with. But that's 11 pages. But I mean, I want you to read it 2 or 3 times before you're done with it. You know what I mean? A couple more tables.
Page 51 to 62, right?
Yep, page 51 through 62. That's right. A couple of tables that I think are of key importance to you. This first one, I'm not sure if you'll have it on your test or not, but it's on every journeyman exam and every master's exam, so I can't imagine they'd rule it out on yours either. But page 43 is table 110.28. So if you ever have a question asking you about an enclosure mounted indoors or outdoors, and asking you, what if it's exposed to wind-blown dust or rain or snow or sleet, what's it got to be rated for? That table on page 43.
Yeah, they asked me something about this.
Yeah, it's not a hard table to understand. It's just a hard table to find when you're in a hurry for some reason. I don't know why, but this is one that I would definitely mark back in my index so I won't forget how to get back to it. And just put box rating or outdoor enclosure rating or something back in the back somewhere, and then put page 43 on it. The other thing they don't tell you about, and I'd mark it at the top, on this table, an X is okay, a dash is not. And they don't explain that anywhere on there, but if it's got an X in one of those slots, that means you can put it in that type of location. Outdoor is the top block there, and indoor is the bottom block. And so if you had a box for outdoor use that was exposed to rain, snow or sleet, it could be any one of those 3 through 6P that are listed there. And that's really, I mean, it's not much more complicated than that. Just remembering that X is okay and the dash is not. The next table that you'll see that's really important to you is under 300.5. I'm skipping a couple of the grounding bonding. We'll come back to tomorrow because that's going to be on our list for tomorrow. But on 300.5, which is going to be page 1, let's see here, 145 is where it's at.
145?
Yeah, page 145. This is an egress table. I'm sorry, a direct buried table. And so anything you bury is going to be listed in the columns at the top. So what you're burying is what the columns are, and where you're burying it is what the rows are. Are you on page 145?
Yeah.
Okay. On that very first column, at the top of column 1, write the word UF and USC, because those are direct buried cables, and so if they give you UF cable, it'll fall under the first column there. You'll notice.
So the first one and the second one, I put a UF cable?
No, on the first one, put UF cable. The second one is rigid, which, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. But the third column, I put PVC on the top of that one. I don't go around calling PVC rigid, non-metallic raceway, so that's why I'm telling you to put PVC on top of the column 3. So Schedule 80 or Schedule 40, either one would fall under column 3. UF cable or USE cable, any kind of underground service entrance cable, would fall under column 1. And then column 4, you need to highlight 3 things or write it at the top. Column 4 is for resi only.
What is it?
Residential. Maximum 20 amps. And they have to be GFCI protected. And you have to have all 3 to use that column.
GFCI protector.
Yeah, they got to be residential branch only. They have to have GFCI, and they can't be more than 20 amps. So maximum 20 amps. And you just put a note right above the top. Just put must have all 3.
Okay.
And in column 5, just highlight that not more than 30 volts, because column 5 is basically landscape lighting. If you want to put landscape across the top, you can.
All right.
All right, and then on the rows here, put the word default or normal under that first column where it says all locations not specified below. Just put default. because really, if they give you any kind of weird location that's not specifically listed elsewhere, it's going to be row one. So row one's kind of your catch-all.
So I put everything catch-all.
Yeah, just put catch-all or default or something. You know, because if they give you like an open field or something like that, that's not a specific location listed below, so it'd be row one. So usually row one is kind of where you're at, unless you have some indication that it's specifically one of the other ones. But then on the third from the bottom, where it says under streets, highways, roads, alleys, driveways, and parking lots,
Yeah.
put commercial next to that, and then put residential on the block that's the second from the bottom. Kind of says the same thing, but it says 1 to 2 family dwelling, driveways, outdoor parking areas, and used only for dwelling related purposes. So that's residential on the second from the bottom. So most of the time, I would imagine that you're either going to be on that second to the bottom row or the top row there, one of the two. Just be careful. If they give you UF cable is listed over there under row 5, but it's for landscape lighting only. So if they don't tell you the voltage rating, you can't assume that it's less than 30 volts. You'd have to only assume that it's a direct braid cable, which puts you in column 1 as a direct braid cable type. So you'll probably have a question that falls under category 4, where you've got the residential 20 amp DCI protected max. That'd be 12 inches if it was one of those. It falls in column 4. On either one of the two rows you'd be concerned with. And then if you've got UF cable anywhere else, it'd be 24 inches, unless it's in a specific residential dwelling area, then it'd be 18 inches. So 18 inches for UF cable under the second from the bottom is residential. Or if it's not, if they just tell you it's residential, but it's like in an open field or something like that, that would be row 1, which would be 24 inches if they give it to you.
24 inches.
All right, so that's an important table to you, and you'll have a question or two that comes out of that, I'm sure. The next table that I think is worth marking for you that you're going to need to know how to deal with is going to be on page 161. And I'm just going to kind of give you my spiel on this Ampasky stuff, but we're going to need to start with a different page. But what I want you to do on page 161 is I want you to mark at the top up there where it's got the 60, the 75, and the 90. This is your wire Ampasky table, right?
Yes.
It's a really important table for you, but the first thing to kind of get this stuff rolling is I put the word Romex across the top of the 60-degree column.
Yeah.
Where it says 60 degrees, just right above that 60-degree C, just put Romex. Put motors across 75 degrees.
Motors?
Yeah, just put the word motors across the top of 75. And then the 90-degree column, above the top of that, put, well, there's a couple things you can put on there, but put the word D-rate only. And I already put all that in there, but D-rate only under the 90. And that is for dry locations, if you can squeeze that in underneath the bottom of it. Wet location 75, and that's for motors. And the 60 degree was Romex.
What is this table doing? Like telling you what kind of wire you can use?
Given the kind of wire you're going to use and the location you put it, it's telling us the ampacity of that wire. And so this is kind of our core steps of sizing the feeder or sizing a branch circuit conductor. This is the wire ampacity table that you start with. And then the two things about this table right off the bat that you have to know about. If you look at the top up there in the headings where it says, formula table 31016, there's two main pieces that this numbers are based off of. The first is that there's not more than 3 current carrying conductors in the raceway cable or earth. The second is that it's not based on more than 86 degrees Fahrenheit of ambient temperature. And ambient temperature, in layman's terms, is just the air surrounding, our installation. In Texas and in El Paso especially,
Yeah.
Austin is required to have an ambient temperature of 98 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I know Houston is 99. I can't imagine that y'all are less than that. I don't know off the top of my head what El Paso is, but Midland, Odessa is probably 99 or 100 if it's anything, because it gets darn hot out there in the summer.
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, that 86 degrees Fahrenheit, if you're looking at the ampacity in any of these columns down here, that's at 86 degrees Fahrenheit. If you are running this stuff in El Paso or Midland, Odessa, you're going to have to adjust that as if you were looking at 100 degrees or 99 degrees instead of 86. And so I'll show you how to derate that here in just a second. But I would highlight that 86 degrees Fahrenheit at the top, and I'd highlight that not more than 3 current carrying conductors, because those are the two main things that numbers are based off of. All right. So leave a piece of paper there, and let's look back to 110.14 C, which is going to be on page 38. Just kind of leave you a marker there and go back to page 38. So, when we're talking about wire ampacity, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to look at that and say, okay, well, a number 10 conductor is good for what? Under page 161, what's it say number 10 is good for?
151. Okay.
$35 amps, right? On the 75-degree column?
What?
35 amps under the 75-degree column?
Page 151, you said, right?
161. Page 161. Where I told you to leave a marker in for that wire table that we just looked at.
Well, 30 amp.
35 under the 75-degree column?
It'd be number 10?
Yep, number 10 is good for 35 amps, it says. I can tell you right now, I failed an inspection once on a residential job I was doing. I was replacing the service. Failed my inspection, so I had to run from my temporary panel out at the roadside, which is a good 100 some odd feet to the house. I ran a 10-3 Romex, left it out there exposed to the Texas sun, baked all day long, and I guarantee I backfed it into the new service panel I had on the house, because I still had people living in it. So I had to have power in the house one way or the other. And I know without a doubt there's at least 70 or 80 amps on that 10-3 Romex all day long. I know there was. So the ampacity of a number 10 is not 35 amps. I can tell you, I know it's not. It takes almost 2,000 amps to start melting a number 10 conductor. Right? So what we're talking about really in this table is not the wire itself. What we're talking about is what's wrapped around the wire. Right? When you think about wire ampacity, you got to get away from thinking about the wire size. Really, what it's really all about, more than anything else, is the insulation of the conductor, and it's different depending on what kind of makeup it is. The dielectric properties of a Romex are wildly different than what it is of an XHHW, which is a good feeder type of insulation that they use a lot of, or THHW, or WN. They're all different. So, looking at it from an insulation property, the temperature limitations that you're looking at on page 38 make a little bit more sense, because what they're telling you here, and this is long before we really get into specific code sections back in the later on in the chapter 3 or chapter 4. This tells you right off the bat, you can never assume any temperature rating on any terminal and any branch circuit for anything rated for 100 amps or less more than 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And it tells you that on the right-hand column of page 38, under C1A, termination provisions of equipment for circuits rated 100 amps or less, marked for 14 AUG through number 1 AUG conductors, shall be used only for one of the following. It tells you right there in number 1, conductors rated 6 degrees Celsius, and that's it. Now, they do tell you a little further on that if you've got motors designed with B, C, or D, they allow you to use 75 degree Celsius column, and that's fine. And then they also tell you under B down there at the bottom, termination provisions for circuits rated over 100 amps or for conductors larger than 1 AUG they tell you under that section 1 there that you can use a 75-degree column for those conductors. All right. What does that mean exactly? Well, what they're telling you is that you can't assume that a conductor, the temperature rating of a conductor, the insulation rating of a conductor is more than 60 degrees Celsius unless you know for a fact that everything in the branch circuit has the same temperature rating. Because the lug on a breaker is rated for a maximum, in some cases 60 degrees, most of the cases it says on the back side of a breaker 60/75. Which means that set screw on that breaker has got a maximum capacity, whatever that 75-degree column is. But they're telling you here that as long as you don't know what that is for everything in that branch circuit, you can't assume anything more than 60 degrees. So, in other words, whatever the lowest temperature value in the branch circuit is the maximum capacity of anything connected to that circuit. So let's go back and look at page 161 and see if I can make it a little bit more clear to you. You ever done any lighting contactors?
No, I haven't.
No. Hey, you know what a contactor is? It's got the little
little
relays in it.
Yeah.
Those things, the general purpose contactors have a 60-degree rating, 60 degrees Celsius. That's the most I think I've ever seen on them. And some of the stuff that you buy in your residential stuff might be rated for 60 degrees, but I think most of it's got a 60/75 degree rating on them. So most of the time you can assume 75 degrees because you know everything on your branch circuit is rated for 75 degrees. But let's just say you had a contactor that you're using on a doorbell relay or something, and it says on the box, the side of it says 60 degrees Celsius, right?
Yeah.
That whatever that branch circuit that has that little relay on it would be, everything in that entire branch circuit then becomes a maximum temperature rating of 60 degrees Celsius because of that one connection in that branch circuit.
Yeah.
So this wire insulation stuff's just one piece of the whole chain, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the weakest link in that chain is what's going to set the bar for everything connected to it.
Yeah.
So you can't lose sight of that. That's why this 60-degree column here where it says Romex there, in Article 334.80, they tell us even there that Romex, even though the individual conductors inside the overall sheath are rated for 9 degrees, as an assembly, 60 degrees Celsius is the maximum you can have on any Romex as a factory assembled cable. So you're looking at 15, 20, and 30 amps, 40 amps for number 8, 6 for number 55 amps for number 6, so on and so forth. But that would also apply to stuff you're running in conduit if you weren't sure that everything in that branch circuit was rated for 75 degrees. Then 60 degrees Celsius would be the maximum you could assume for that as well. So that 60-degree column is really kind of an important number, and that's usually your maximum value on your residential stuff is that 60-degree column. Now, if they tell you that 75 degrees is going to be your terminal provision ratings, or they tell you your terminal is rated for 75, and you're not running Romex, it'll give you a question whether you're running conduit or something like that, then you can shift that 60-degree column to the 75-degree column. But either way, either the 60-degree column or the 70-degree column will be the maximum capacity you can ever have on any question for any wire size, no matter what, ever.
So it'll be 60 and 75?
60 and 75. 60 if it's Romex, 75 if they tell you have 75-degree rated terminals and you've got wire that's listed in that top up there, like THWN or something like that. So basically, you look at column number 1 there, that 60-degree column. You look at this as basically all circuits that are rated for 100 amps or less. That's the maximum rating there by code in the 60-degree column, or if it's running Romex, either one of those two conditions. The 75-degree column is going to be all circuits rated for 101 amps or larger. And no matter what, it's really the maximum value, no matter what any other condition. Maximum value, period.
So what kind of question would they put so I could use this
Let's say like that question we were having a minute ago, especially your feeder calculation, your feeder questions. If they gave you a list of items and wanted you to actually size the feeder for it, the feeder, depending on what type it is and what they gave you on your terminal provisions, you'd have to choose whether or not you're starting with either a 60-degree column or a 75-degree column. Mainly it'd be a question that has any kind of insulation rating written down, like THWN or XHHW or anything like that. You recall any sizing any wire or feeders or anything like that with wire letter designations in it?
Okay. Yeah, I remember having those. I couldn't find them.
Okay. So if do you remember kind of what they were asking you about? Did they give you like a couple of number 8s and number 6s in the conduit or anything, or was it like just a bunch of number 12-2 raw?
No, they give me like. I remember they gave me like the rating, and then and the answer they gave me like what kind of wire would it be? THNW or
Okay. Yeah. That would fall into that. So if they just gave you like what's an XHHW rated for? Is it 75 or 60 or 90, something like that?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the single H in a letter at the top up there, a single H means 75-degree rating.
What does it mean?
A single H means 75 degrees.
A single H?
A single H. So like this RHW, for example, or that THW, that
Yeah.
single H there means that that's a 75-degree rated conductor.
So whenever it has an H, is single 75.
75, that's right. A double H, like the stuff that you see on the next column over mainly, THHW, double H is a 9-degree rating.
Oh, okay. Right.
The -2 is also a 9-degree rating, so you can have a THW-2, for example. But the two. That -2 makes it a 9-degree rated conductor instead of 75 normally. An X means that it's a synthetic outer blend, but that W at the end means that it's rated for a wet location.
What locations?
Yep. And anything anything buried below grade in a wet location is going to be considered a wet location. Whether it's direct grade,
wet locations? What do you mean by wet locations?
you just got to consider that there's going to be some water present in it, and when you have that, any kind of condition that's considered or classified wet, you have to have a W suffix in your wire to be installed there. A list of those, just so you'll have them. There's a handy list if you look on page 155 under the left-hand column under 310.10 B and C. B gives you the dry or damp, or dry and damp locations, and then C lists all the wet locations.
Which is page 155?
Page 155. Page 155 of the left-hand column.
Yeah, wet location.
Wet location, yeah.
Okay.
Did you have any questions that gave you like a bundle of more than 3 or 4 12-2 Romexes or anything like that, and ask you for the ampacity or the breaker size or anything like that you can recall?
No, I don't.
Okay. Anything that says it was 75-degree rated terminals and ask you the size of the wire for it?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
If you give you like a 30 amp load and said you had 75-degree rated terminals or something and asked you what size wire you'd run to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They ask me stuff like that.
All right. That's what this does on page 161, and so it's important to you to kind of look at that. The little asterisk next to the small conductors if you're looking on page 161 on the wire sizes on the far left side, those little asterisks are a small conductor rule that tell you down at the bottom to refer to 240.4D. And basically, that just tells you that a size 14 is going to be a 15 amp maximum. Number 12 is going to have a 20 amp maximum breaker size, and number 10 is going to have 30 amp breaker size. So really, the values that you're looking at a 6-degree column are the same as the breaker sizes would be permitted to be in most cases.
Okay.
And I think
I was trying to look for this table when I was taking the test. I just couldn't find it.
Okay, yeah, it's an important page. It's got a lot going for it. Now, the applications you guys will use it for are a lot less, in scope than some of the other guys. But the things that you got to know about this table that go with it is on page 160 there to your left. If you're looking at the left-hand column, page 160. There's 2 tables there. The middle table there on the left-hand column is a table that's for adjusting in case you run it across a rooftop. You may not have a question to ask you about that, but if you do, that's what that table does. And that last column there is an adder in Fahrenheit that you would add to the ambient temperature if you had a rooftop install. So I think if you have one, they'll just simply ask you, if you're running it at 3.5 inches above a roof, what do you add to the ambient temperature? And that's a pretty easy table. But just be aware that that's there. The table above it is where you get more than 3 current carrying conductors in the same raceway or bundle for more than 24 inches. So if you have a Romex up in an attic where you're laying it on top of each other or bundling it together in the same ring or not maintaining separation, you get more than more than 3 conductors, you have to take an 80% derating of the ampacity values that are on page 161. So it's just a derating table. And then the most important one out of all of them is on page 158. Again, I don't see that they'll give you too much where you have to do the math on it. But if you have an ambient temperature that's not 86 degrees Fahrenheit, so for example, if you're running stuff in somebody's attic at 140 degrees Fahrenheit instead of 86, that last column on this little table that's on the top left-hand column of page 158, that last column there is ambient temperature in Fahrenheit. So that would be the column you'd use to find the ambient temperature you might adjust it by. And then if you're doing Romex, that 6 degrees Celsius column there, which is the second column there, that would be a multiplier to use against the values that you see in the column on page 161. So let's just say you're running stuff outside a building in like the outside feeders or something at 98 degrees or 99 degrees Fahrenheit. That 82 that you're looking at, that 6 degree column, that 82 is 82% of the number that you see of the Romex values on the 6 degree column on page 161. So if I'm running a 100 amp service, for example, used to be that there was a table for residential feeders on page 160, and it's gone now. And it's replaced with some math stuff, but tomorrow, if you'll remind me, I'll give you that same table that used to be there, and you can just write it back in the bottom of your book. But bottom line is that residential feeders, if I'm running a 100 amp service, the smallest wire I'd normally be able to run would be a number 4. Assuming that they're 75 degree rated on the terminals there, and they would be. That adjustment at 99 degrees would be an 82% derating of what that number 4 would be rated for. Now, the rating for residential feeders is not what it shows you here on page 161, so it's a bad example to give you. But do you remember the table I'm talking about in your 2011 edition? The size of the feeders for residential service? Huh? Do you have a 2011 book laying around by you? Yeah. You do?
I'd have to look for it, but
all right. I'll send you. I'll tell you what. I'll just send you an email copy of mine. It's on page 153 if you happen to find the book. If that table that's on page 153 of your 2011 code book, you should write it in on page 160 of this code book. Just write it in because it'll save you a little headache if you have any feeders for residential dwellings, because it's going to be easier to use that table than it would be to use the math. All right, I'm going to leave it at that for the night because we're kind of a little past our time, but we'll pick it back up where we leave off. If you don't, do you think you can find your code book or no?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, just take a look at it. 154 is the ampacity table, and 153 is the feeders for residential dwellings. And if you find it, then just pencil that table in on page 160 at the bottom of the page there.
What page was it? On 154 or what?
Page 153 of your 2011 book. The article number, or the table number, is 310.15b7.
310.15b7?
Yep, and it says residential feeders is a little table that's on the right-hand column of the page there, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And I don't know why they took it out of this book and added this math deal, because you end up right back to that table anyway when you're sizing the feeders. But
okay.
But that'll help us tomorrow, and we'll get started there. And then we'll do services tomorrow. We didn't do Ohm's Law tonight, but we'll do them tomorrow. And then we've got some other tables to talk about, grounding and bonding, and then of course we got started on size and wire for how many amps. You said you had 4 questions that were kind of in that size and wire, or had something to do with sizing of wire for a certain capacity. So if you could do me a favor, if you can remember any details at all whatsoever about something like that, that'd be helpful. That way I can make sure I'd stay as close to relevant as possible with your question examples.
I'm gonna try to look for the test results so I can show it to you.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. I'd like to see kind of where you're at on everything.
I'm gonna take the test till Monday. I don't know if you can give me more classes. I don't know if you have time for that.
Yeah, I don't have a class this weekend, so this is a good time to fit stuff in. It's not going to hurt me at all, especially this weekend or something. So,
All
but
right.
taking it Monday, but I don't want to waste your time and just tell you stuff that's not, directly relevant either, because I know there's a lot of stuff that is relevant to the journeyman and the masters, but not necessarily the residential wireman. So I just, if we get into stuff that you say, well, that wasn't on my test, don't feel like you're going to hurt my feelings at all, because I don't mind backing off and going back and staying on stuff that's closer to you. So.
All
Uh,
right.
So that's what I'm saying. If you can help me with anything you can remember of sizing wire or wiring capacity, any details at all whatsoever, if you can remember anything like that, just jot it down. Doesn't have to be a full question, just kind of like we just talking about. They're asking you to, given a certain ampacity, which one of the following conductors would you use to size it with, or something like that. But anyway, I'll see you tomorrow then, right? It's 5:30.
Oh yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna
All right.
I'm gonna ask you to try to take a crack at those that little homework sheet that I gave you if you can.
All right.
Because the reason why, if you'll try those tonight or tomorrow, then tomorrow when we get started, I'll show you how I pick those questions apart and how to find them in my code book.
All right.
Good examples of what you first asked me tonight on kind of some practical application.
Look for them.
Okay.
All right.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you. Good night, man.
Bye.